Well, a very good evening to you once again. Thank you very much for joining us here on The Full View. Now, police and emergency officials are still on the scene of a shooting in Durban, where 5 family members have been killed. Well, let's cross now live at SABC reporter Mlungisi Khumalo, who's just outside the scene with Gareth Jameson from Emergency Services. A very good evening to you, Mlu. Are there any more details this evening, in addition to what we do know, that this is the home of a Durban magistrate, his wife and 3 children?
Yes, unfortunately, Griselda, it is not a good evening. Just now, earlier on, we also heard from the police now that they discovered 5 bodies just at that house behind me. And currently where I am, we are currently in Montclair, just outside Durban, where everything has literally come to a standstill, where friends, mourners and family members as well have also come to witness and also see with their very own eyes as to what really happened just behind me. You mentioned earlier on, Griselda, that yes, one of the victims is an interpreter at the Durban Magistrate Court, and the lady, of course, is a magistrate, and of course we understand that 3 children also died between the ages of 9 and 17 years old. But to tell me more about what transpired earlier on, I've got Gareth Jameson from the Emergency Rescue Unit. Thank you very much for your time, Gareth. Just briefly, what transpired here from your own understanding?
From our understanding, we were called here by the police services just after 2 p.m. this afternoon for a multiple casualty shooting. We arrived with EMRS paramedics as well, and we were faced with absolute tragedy. 5 people had sustained multiple gunshot wounds, and all 5 were declared deceased on the scene by paramedics. There was no other injuries, and obviously the scene was cordoned off by the police for further investigation.
Gareth, when you walked into the house for the very first time, how were the bodies scattered?
They were in the main room. Unfortunately, I can't disclose too much. However, it was a horrific sight. It wasn't pleasant at all.
And lastly, Gareth, does this seem to be a domestic matter whereby the father shot himself and then turned the gun and then also shot his family members?
Unknown at this stage. Obviously, SAPS will investigate as to what exactly led up to the shooting and who actually fired the shots.
And lastly, Gareth, from your interaction with family as well as people right here on the streets and neighbors, what can you gather?
It's a sad day. Obviously, the community is not, they're quite shocked by this, and a lot of them weren't aware of it until this actually went out on social media platforms. So a lot of people came through here, and not many people heard anything. And the ones that did were obviously were interviewed by the police, and obviously statements were then taken by them.
And for clarity's sake, when did this incident transpire?
We got the call at 2 p.m., just after 2 p.m. today. I believe I did hear Colonel Zwane say they were noted at about 1 o'clock. However, I do think this occurred a few hours before our arrival.
Thank you very much, Gareth Jameson. That is Gareth Jameson from the Emergency Rescue Services. He mentions that, of course, they can confirm that 5 bodies were found at their house just behind me. Now, also quite interesting enough, Griselda, that I personally knew the person that died in this particular place. His name was Sandile Mkhize. If I'm allowed to disclose his details, of course, we also earlier on saw members of his family going inside the house. And, of course, he was a very gentle person. Almost most of the media personnel knew him. He was actually an interpreter at the Durban Magistrate Court. And so to speak, I mean, the last time I actually interacted with him, it was during the case of Sadia Sukraj from Chatsworth. You remember the 9-year-old girl that was gunned down during a robbery that went wrong. And of course, I mean, we chatted because we literally knew each other. And of course, I then made a few phone calls to some of his colleagues whom he works with at the Durban Magistrate Court. They did tell us that they are very saddened by this ordeal. They said that, of course, they will miss him. He was a very gentle person, very humble person. And they also confirmed to us that indeed he did own a gun. And of course, they also told us that they never suspected that he was a person who was unhappy. But for now, police can therefore not confirm to us whether this was a domestic matter or not. But from our initial understanding, we were then told that he first shot his wife, then his 3 children, and of course, then turned the gun to himself, Griselda.
Mlungisi, I hear you speaking about confirmation from the police that the deceased did own, one of the deceased did own a firearm. My understanding is also from Durban police that a firearm was found on the scene as well. Can you confirm that for us at this stage?
Yes, indeed, a firearm was found on the scene, although neighbors have actually told police as well that they never heard any gunshot today, but we now understand that the incident took place at the very late hours of this morning. But of course, the deceased owned a gun, and of course, the police did also confirm to us that they did find a gun on the scene. And also, quite interesting enough, we also now confirm that those that were found dead, including the 3 children and his wife, who also happens to be a magistrate at the Durban Magistrate Court, were also found with gun wounds, unfortunately.
Yeah, there must be shock and horror. I see already from where you're standing, Mlungisi, there are some neighbors, some women and children that are standing behind you. I mean, what are some of them saying? You said that some said they didn't hear anything, but it must be absolute shock and horror on their part, you know, that police have and emergency services have now made this discovery in their neighborhood.
Well, look, Crisella, when we got here in the late hours of this afternoon, this road actually just piled and queuing with cars. That also gave us a brief indication that the neighbors knew this particular person. And of course, earlier on, we saw school children. As soon as they got to this very gate, some of them just literally started sobbing and weeping. That also, again, gave you an indication that they knew this particular family. And of course, we also had members of the ANC in the area who also told us that they knew Mr. Sandy Mkhize, who also happens to be a prominent ANC member in this particular area. They said that they worked with him extensively. And of course, we also spoke to some of the neighbors who told us more about this family. They said that they were very shocked and very saddened because nothing of the sort has actually happened in this particular area. They were indeed very, very saddened. As I'm talking to you right now, Griselda, yes, cars are still here. People are still coming here in their number just to witness this particular tragedy. Now, earlier on, we also understand that the vans from the mortuary were also here just to get the bodies. We also understand now that the bodies have now been transported to the nearest mortuary.
All right. Mlungisi Khumalo, thank you very much for your time. They're live outside the scene there of a shooting in Montclair in the south of Durban, where a man, woman and 3 children were found dead. Let's go now to Francis Hurd, who will be speaking to